Charlotte Maxeke broke through barriers at a time when women were expected to know their place in so-called society. Known as a woman of many firsts, Maxeke took pride in ensuring that more women had a seat at the table. As we count down to 150 years anniversary of this legend, South Africa is reminded of her resilience and contribution to the liberation struggle. Let's discuss how she will be honoured now with the Sports, Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa, who joins us via Skype. Minister, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, even 150 years on, for the life and achievements of Charlotte Maxeke is still extremely relevant, especially against the backdrop of the scourge of gender-based violence in our country and a youth who is so desperately in need of inspiration during these tough economic times.
Oh yes, thanks Marcel and your viewers. It's precisely because Maxeke was a visionary. She really lived way ahead of her times, because the issue of the fight against patriarchy in our society, the issue of creating a gender equal society, an unracial society, was something she lived, and she also impacted broadly in other social stations of the development of South Africa, whether we're talking about a leader of workers, whether we're talking of an academic par excellence. As you know that she was the first African graduate, BSc graduate at the University of the US. So what we are doing now and the challenges which were faced as a society of both pandemics, as the President has said, of COVID-19 and gender-based violence, we just see that we need to do everything in our power to respect and honor this colossal figure in our history, and would be doing that, one, by deepening consciousness among society to understand the leader. Many people, whenever they are talking of leaders and people who trailed the place in this country, they think it's only men. He actually led men. He actually led even those who would have founded the oldest liberation movement on the continent, the African National Congress itself.
I'm sure people will keep an eye on the media to find out what other events will be planned by your department to mark this very important life's work of Charlotte Maxeke. So thank you so much for that update. I hope you forgive me now that we now swiftly change gears, as you've been in the news for various reasons around very important issues as a result of lockdown. So that's where I'm going to shift our focus to now, if you don't mind. Now, early in May, your department announced that it had received around 5,000 applications for that important relief fund announced by your department early around the start of our lockdown, 1,000 of which at the time had been processed, with only 105 approved. By the end of May, 1,250 applications had been approved, but after an appeal process that you pushed, especially on social media as well, that number was increased to 1,520. Now, I think you'd agree that that is a very small percentage of an application pool that is already quite small if you take into consideration the many thousands of South Africans who work in that important sector that falls within your department and have a loss of income as a result of the pandemic and lockdown. What is the latest information that you can give us about payments that have been made, and is there still hope for others to have access to this 200 million rand relief fund that you are desperately trying to process?
Yes, right from the beginning we did indicate that we noted that when we asked for applications was the beginning of the lockdown, and as a result many people were excluded. They couldn't access facilities to ensure that they are able to apply, and as a result you had a lot of people, especially Africans, people who come from historically disadvantaged communities, who find themselves rejected in the process, and for various reasons. We then made a commitment that we will do everything in our power to ensure that those who need it most, who need the relief most, especially Africans, as we said, we find a way of ensuring that they get that. And indeed, in a fair way, when we put up the appeals committee, it find that most of them, had to get the relief because some of the obstacles which blocked them had to do with the whole system, had to do with a number of things which were out of the control of the people who had applied. So it's those people now who are, their number has arisen, and as a result, the way in which, the speed in which we are moving has somewhat, slowed down, and we are trying to get other means to ensure that we fast track it, because it's a good thing that they were able to get a second chance, but also we are not so much happy with the fact that, as far as we're concerned, is that if it happens that the people are, approved, they should get that relief as quick as possible. But we are aware that it is a relief, and it was not going to be able to cover everybody. So we are also determined that post this period, because people are still being, their cases are still being adjudicated and as appeals. So we would want all of them to be taken. Very few still couldn't make it, even after the appeals.
Now, Minister, you've had quite a few open letters written to you by well-known artists. But if you could focus on the little guy, as it were, social media is awash with desperate messages from young comedians, young production assistants, eventing crew members, who say that they've gone through the processes, they gave the right documentation as far as they understand, and then they'll get a message that says, oh no, there is proof that you do have other income. Now, these are people mainly who have no reason to be lying, being dishonest. What do you say to, especially these young people in the industry? Do you admit that this process has been flawed? Do we admit there have been issues around deadlines being changed, just around this industry as a whole not being protected by their employers, and now they feel that they've even been let down by government?
You can't get it twice. There are people, even in this space, who get nothing whatsoever from government, from anywhere. So we've gone for the most vulnerable. There's nothing flawed about that. It's a very deliberate move with the little resources which are there. And even at that level, we cannot cover. If perhaps we had had our way to cover all the people who only depend on the gigs, who only depend in what they do. There's nothing, there's no cent, there's no grant from government. We were very clear about that right from the beginning, that if you look at other relief funds in government, we take that into account, because desperation levels are not the same. So we go for the worst case scenario, and there's nothing flawed with that. We'll, as I said, would have wished to cover others who, in the category we are raising.
Now, Minister, what do you then make of accusations from some that say that it's not just the most desperate that have been helped, and there's some quite well-known names under the guise of foundations and that kind of thing who've received some kind of help? Are those accusations baseless?
There are two processes here. There's a relief, just for relief, and we mentioned this right from the beginning. And there is a process of productions, live streaming, which would only be done by people who have the know-how to do that. Those may not be your most desperate, but your most desperate may not have a skill for live streaming and so on and so forth. So that's and that in that category you have the legends of the industry, as it were, and if then they accuse and say no, that company or that foundation is not the most desperate, it's because of the second leg of the same program, which is not just relief to those who need the relief.
Just quickly before I let you go, otherwise my sports department will be very upset that I don't ask you this question. News coming through yesterday that this much looked forward to event being planned by the Cricket Federation called the Solidarity Cup. They had a long launch press conference earlier in the week saying that the Solidarity Cup is going ahead on the 27th of June and finally South Africans will have some cricket that they can watch, and then a statement coming from your department saying that is not the case. A due process has not been followed, even though CSA said that they did follow due process, and you said there are various boxes that need to be ticked. Players need to be tested, and all of those COVID-19 related things that now need to be taken care of. And you're saying that CSA didn't ensure that all of these things have already been finalized before they get the official go-ahead from you. Your comment on that, because you're dealing with a big sports federation that's now been left with egg on their faces.
No, it wasn't the intention to leave an egg on anybody's face. We have processes. We are not going to be reckless. As we open the sporting fraternity and sporting processes, we are still going to stick by the health protocols, and that's what we are doing. And yes, Cricket South Africa did apply, and we were considering that, taking it to NICD to look into the case. And that's the statement I made, and I'm making it even now. And any other sporting code must not rush ahead to go and play and do things when we have not finalized the process. Remember, the direction says that after the promulgation or the gazetting of the directions, we are giving everybody 14 days to ensure that they tick the necessary boxes, because we don't want to send people to death through COVID-19.
You also made a comment earlier this week that you're not entirely happy with the rate of transformation reflected at Cricket South Africa in the management structures of the game. Cricket is not your favorite sports right now, is it?
Well, it's just that it was cricket which was appearing before the portfolio committee. We'll be communicating as we meet other sporting codes. Remember that 2 weeks ago we released the Eminent Persons Group, which is about assessing the levels of transformation in sport generally. And in that report, cricket got a nod from EPG, with the exception in the main of Africans, but what is called generic blacks, if you talk people of Indian origin, South Africans of Indian origin, colored and African people and so on. So that was one area which was flagged. But this time around, I'm pointing to a regress. And I said, not that I'm not happy. Not being happy is an understatement. I take this as a serious violation and an insult to be told that within the core of the sport, 5 key people, the only thing you can have there is a deputy who's an African and all white. That can't be tolerated. I'm still going to meet with them, cricket and other sporting codes, because we do not want, we have been talking about this transformation thing. The time has come for us to talk, but also act when things are not happening.
Thank you so much for your time. Your plate is certainly full during this time. The Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Nathi Mthethwa, joining us this morning.